Watching Watchmen is exhausting. There's so many Easter eggs, references, and hidden symbolism packed into every episode. I mean, you really have to watch it twice. Or you can just let me do all the work for you here on Screen Crush. The episode begins on the night Ozymandias teleported a squid monster into Manhattan. Now in the comics, the squid's brain was cloned from a psychic and programmed to send out disturbing, traumatic images. That way, every psychic on Earth, or even people with just a touch of the shine, would feel that trauma. Now that brings me to young Wade Tillman, aka Looking Glass, who apparently has a bit of a psychic touch. This also explains how he can so accurately tell if people are lying. As a teen, he was sent on a Jehovah's Witness mission to Hoboken, New Jersey.
This is where the sinners are.
The Watchtower is the church's actual pamphlet, but using it in the Watchmen is a nice touch. In fact, it's probably the reason they decided to make Wade a Jehovah's Witness instead of, say, a Baptist. His minister says,
"Tick-tock, Wade."
The fourth time that phrase has been uttered on the show.
Tick-tock.
Now on this night, the doomsday clock is set to 1 minute till midnight. Now this is an actual calculation made by atomic scientists that estimates how close the world is to nuclear Armageddon. That's why it appears on every issue of The Watchmen and why the line nearing midnight motif appears throughout the comic and this show. And by the way, right now it's set at 2 minutes to midnight. Isn't that horrifying? The song in the opening is Things Can Only Get Better by Howard Jones because this is the worst night of Wade's life. There's so many Easter eggs on the streets of Hoboken. This war newspaper headline is straight from the comic book. This guy is reading an issue of The Black Freighter, the comic within a comic from Watchmen that I'm going to mention more of in a bit. There's an ad on the back cover for the Veidt method, a self-help program developed by Adrian Veidt. But I don't think this is the same issue of Black Freighter that Bernard was reading in The Watchmen because the ads don't match. There's posters for the band Pale Horse who were playing at Madison Square Garden when the squid monster teleported in. I can't read this newspaper headline, but it's written in the Watchmen font. Wade is harassed by members of the Knot Tops, the same gang that murdered Hollis Mason in the Watchmen. Clocks appear frequently throughout the episode, placed between Wade having a conversation with someone else. This is both consistent with Watchmen's theme of clocks and also indicates that his time is running out. When he enters the funhouse, at first everything is a Manhattan shade of blue. Now look, I could be wrong about this, but I think this color always seems to indicate the presence of a higher power. So, in the funhouse, Wade enters with the best of intentions to serve God, but soon everything turns to red. Now obviously this makes us think of blood, fire, hell, and damnation, but all throughout the episode, red is associated with Wade's trauma. Red is the color of the extra-dimensional security alarm, and the box the unit's delivered in. It's the Methodist Church's symbol of both the flame and the blood of Christ, and Wade's red hat even bears the logo of a natural disaster. Speaking of Wade's trauma, his is tied to funhouse mirrors, which explains his alter ego, Looking Glass. Like Lori said in the last episode,
People who wear masks are driven by trauma. They're obsessed with justice because of some injustice they suffered, usually when they were kids.
So Batman is scared of bats and Looking Glass is afraid of mirrors. When he exits the funhouse, the girl is bleeding from her eyes. This is reminiscent of Saul, who was blinded when he saw God on the road to Damascus. This girl was also struck down after witnessing a celestial event. Now normally I wouldn't reach for religious symbolism, but because Wade was on a religious mission, I think it fits. Now a few other visuals stick out. One, the clown at the funhouse entrance. The comic character, the comedian, Laurie's father, is said to be deliberately amoral. He thinks the world is so awful that you can't make it better, you might as well laugh at it because it's just one big joke. Apropos of that, Veidt's squid monster hoax is essentially a practical joke. That dichotomy of comedy and tragedy is also displayed by the signs on the funhouse that read fun and fair. Now fair could have a double meaning as injustice, like Veidt is doing the righteous thing for the world. And notice the panda bear covered in blood, a tidy callback to this line.
What's up with the pandas?
In the kingdom of heaven, all God's creations live in peace with each.
Basically meaning the squid monster kills everyone, no matter how innocent. There's also a parallel here with the panda police officer who's always trying to find a peaceful solution by obeying the rules.
Firearms release is authorized.
Chief, you're making a mistake.
And this shot of people sprawled dead over a clock is also from the final issue of the comic. The Ferris wheel is called the Atomic, a reference to nuclear war. It continues to spin like a clock after the disaster. The camera moves past Sinatra Drive as his rendition of New York, New York begins. Sinatra is originally from Hoboken. Then the camera moves across the Hudson and we get our first look at the live-action squid monster. The couple in the commercial are standing outside a Broadway show called Oppenheimer about one of the scientists who created the atomic bomb. In the background there's a sign for the Promethean Cab Company that's from the comics, and also for Millennium. This was a line of cosmetics which Adrian Veidt created to replace his earlier line, Nostalgia. He thought people would want to embrace the future after this disaster. But, according to the PDpedia on HBO's website, the product line failed because people were too afraid to boldly accept the future and they wanted to stay in the past. Wade tells the people at the ad agency,
I watched them watch,
and what I saw was fear.
And it's not subtle, but the word watch appears over and over in the episode. And the motto of the police and the Watchmen series is who watches the Watchmen. In other words, who can we trust to guard us? This motto also appears on the door to Laurie's office. Now notice the 7th Cavalry flag has fewer stars than the US flag, and it's cut into a pennant. It has fewer stars because people on the far right don't agree with adding so many more states because it creates more non-white Americans. Laurie once again displays her dad's sense of humor and skill at putting costume people in their place.
Hey, mirror guy.
Veidt eats raw baked beans out of a can, just like Rorschach. The characters also wear similar masks and have an unwavering belief in the truth. Now, like I said earlier, Wade's EDS box is red, but the catalog is yellow, as is the phone he uses to call them. In The Watchmen, yellow is often used to show caution and comedy. So this symbolizes that essentially, the universe is playing a practical joke on Veidt. The difference between a lie and a joke is your status. If you're high status, then it's a joke. If you're low status, then it's a horrible lie. American Hero Story shows Hooded Justice and Captain Metropolis are in a relationship, which in a roundabout way is a dig at the terrible Before Watchmen comic DC published a few years ago. In that comic, Hooded Justice was in a relationship with Captain Metropolis. Now, as PD told us in the last episode, the TV show isn't a reliable source of information.
That show is garbage. It's
On his wall, there's a newspaper headline from the squid attack and a certificate for extraterrestrial squid science. His next focus group is for a cereal called Smiley-O's. Now notice the slow zoom out from the happy face, just like the opening of the first issue of The Watchmen. The manufacturer is Happy Harry's. That's the name of a seedy bar where Rorschach interrogated thugs. And notice there's a rocket ship inside the box, perhaps foreshadowing Adrian Veidt's fate. Wade's ex-wife works at a cloning company called Forever Pet, owned by True Industries, but taken over from Adrian Veidt. Veidt's own pet lynx, Bubastis, was a clone, and the squid monster was created by cloning marine life in the brain of a psychic. The concept of pet cloning is interesting for a few reasons. For one, it means you never have to grieve or accept loss. You can just ignore bad things and get on with your life. Much like for decades, the city of Tulsa swept the 1921 race massacre under the rug. Now this adorable puppy is disposed of, much like the cloned infants that Veidt threw away in the swamp. Now this shows that when you manufacture life, life becomes cheap. And when life becomes cheap, you don't mind how many people you sacrifice to attain your goal, much like Adrian Veidt. The red pills that Will left for Angela are nostalgia, a banned drug that allows you to relive memories. According to the PDpedia, red pills show especially traumatic memories. True Industries created the drug and named it after Veidt's popular cosmetics line from the 80s. In the support group, a man mentions the idea of genetic trauma.
Basically, if something really bad happens to your parents, it gets locked into their DNA.
Now, in many ways, this is what Will and True are doing for their offspring. Now, here's my crazy theory for this video. Lady True is named after the real-life Lady True, a Vietnamese hero who resisted the Chinese occupation of Vietnam back in the 2nd century. True is said to ride a white elephant into battle. One of the reasons modern-day True surrounds herself with elephant totems. So what if she's descended from the historical Lady True, and because of genetic memory, she's able to recall her ancestors' past? Probably too nutty, but you never know. Let me know what you think down in the comments. When Trixie from Deadwood enters the church, Wade asks,
Friend of Nemo's.
This is a reference to Captain Nemo, the Jules Verne character from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Nemo is best known for fighting a giant squid. A line in that novel gives the episode its title, Little Fear of Lightning. The line reads, "If there were no thunder, men would have little fear of lightning." Now in this context, the thunder is the squid monster. It's the loud, flashy threat that gets everyone to stand in line. But the lightning, the real threat, is the powers at play behind the squid. To comfort his support group, Wade says,
Does it ever end? Of course it does. Because we are all in a tunnel, and every tunnel ends.
But in a roundabout way, he's actually talking about time. Humans perceive time in a linear way. Everything has a beginning and an end. But to Dr. Manhattan, all of time is happening at once. So while we may see a straight line, he sees a circle with no ending or beginning. This is one reason his last words to Adrian Veidt are "nothing ever ends." But for these characters, this concept of circular time also refers to the cycle of racial violence they're stuck inside. In the bar, blue light hovers over them, which I think again symbolizes God or Dr. Manhattan. She talks about the early 90s Spielberg movie Pale Horse. Now this film is this reality's version of Schindler's List. She even mentions the little girl in a red coat.
The movie's black and white, so the red really pops, you know?
Again, red symbolizing trauma and bloodshed. The song playing in the bar is Sturgill Simpson's Turtles All the Way Down. Now that expression is based on the belief that the entire world rests on the back of a giant turtle. So what's the turtle sitting on? Well, it's just turtles all the way down. In other words, belief is built on the concept of belief, not on facts. It's a trippy song, but the lyrics in this scene say that the singer could only see God in the eyes of his best friend. In the same way, the people of the support group grapple with celestial events by helping one another. When Wade enters the 7th Cavalry compound, we hear a clock ticking. This painting on the wall kind of looks like a squid eye, but it's also present in the PDpedia. Senator Keene's grandfather wrote a letter to Judd's grandfather about their Klan activities and signed it with this symbol. Now, according to next week's trailer, this symbol features heavily in Will's memories. Now, the music playing in this scene is Mozart's Requiem in D minor. The lyrics in this portion are, "Mournful that day when from the ashes shall rise the guilty man to be judged." Now, I believe the guilty man here is referring to Adrian Veidt. The ashes are the destruction from the squid monster attack, and Wade is the one who's going to judge him. Now, if you remember in the comic, Rorschach was the only hero who wanted to reveal that the squid monster was a hoax, which is one of the reasons why the 7th Cavalry wears masks. The cavalry are using synthetic lithium to create a teleporter. Synthetic lithium was created by Dr. Manhattan, but people stopped using it and other Manhattan inventions because they believed it caused cancer. That's why they had to acquire lithium from old wristwatches in the first episode.
They're the old kind. The synthetic lithium, the ones that were making people sick.
Oh, I get it. Cavalry's gonna make it a cancer bomb.
Then we get the obvious reveal that Keene is head of the cavalry, and the maybe not trustworthy reveal that he and Judd assumed control of the cavalry and the police.
Each of us managing our respective teams so that we could maintain the peace.
This is kind of similar to the governments of the United States and the Soviet Union, who maintained the illusion of a squid monster attack as a way to stave off nuclear war. Wade mentions the Center for Transdimensional Studies, which is a business owned by Veidt in the comic, and was blamed for bringing the squids to Earth. Now, before Wade watches the tape, Keene tells him,
"I'll leave it entirely in your hands,"
which is the last line of the comic book, spoken by the right-wing editor of the New Frontiersman to Seymour just before he reads Rorschach's journal, which also contained the truth about the squid attack. He watches Veidt's message to Robert Redford on a bank of TV monitors, similar to the ones Veidt used in the comics. And how weird is it that this show contains a supervillain confessing his master plan to Robert Redford? Veidt also says,
"I'll have to maintain the peace with additional small-scale extra-dimensional events,"
implying that he's the one behind all these random squid falls. He also tells Redford,
"my partner in building a utopia."
In the comic, there was a theater in Herald Square called the Utopian Theater. Now, prior to the attack, it showed alien invasion movies like This Island Earth. Now, there's a fan theory that Veidt owned this theater and showed these movies to subconsciously prime people for the possibility of an alien attack. And this line,
"I envision a stronger, loving world,"
is a reference to the title of the Watchmen's final issue. So let's talk about Veidt, who, as predicted, is trapped on a moon, just not the moon like I thought. He's wearing the helm of his idol, Alexander the Great, for a space helmet. The symbol on his belt is the Eye of Horus, meant to guard Egyptian pharaohs into the afterlife. Appropriate, since Ozymandias named himself after a pharaoh, and he's just catapulted himself into the heavens. His 2 gauges are a barometer and the pocket watch Mr. Phillips made for him in the first episode. He arranges bodies to spell out a message for help. This is like the sailor in the Black Freighter story who used the bodies of his shipmates as a life raft to get home. Again, Veidt's story is meant to parallel the Black Freighter. Also, the bodies on the moon call to mind the other massacre at the Hoboken Carnival at the start of the episode. Veidt giving his servants a good murdering also happens in issue 11 of Watchmen. Now notice also that he spells out "save me" and then D, so it looks like the rest of the word is cut off. What do you think he's trying to spell? Dr. Manhattan? Let me know down in the comments below. A geometric shape that's visible from space is similar to the smiley face on Mars from the comic. Then he holds up his hands and says, "I did it!" which repeats his triumphant moment from the comic. Then the warden rips him back into his pocket reality, not through the sky, but on the ground. And Veidt says,
"Your gods abandon you."
Alright, so let's talk about where Veidt is and how he got there. Now this looks like Jupiter, not Mars. There's an Easter egg there because Laurie's mother was named Sally Jupiter. So this would have to be Dr. Manhattan doing this, right? Sister Knight's arrest in the middle of the series is similar to Rorschach's arrest in the middle of the comic. Every episode of Watchmen ends with a scene that bookends the beginning. Now this episode began with a bus filled with people bringing word of eternal life, arriving in a place of death. The episode ends with a truck of people bringing death into a house that's found new life. Mirrors appear throughout the episode. The title is presented backwards because it's reflected in a mirror. Wade works through a 2-way mirror, and the columns in the 7th Cavalry compound are mirrored. People working at Forever Pet are identical twins, making them the mirror image of each other. But the reason the episode is filled with mirrors is because mirrors reveal the truth.
You're pathetic. And you're a sinner.
And revealing the truth is Wade's job. Well, it's both of his jobs.
You can tell when people are lying.
Indeed, I can.
Wade, like Rorschach, is pursuing absolute truth. His first line of the episode is,
"Are you ready to hear the truth?"
As a religious person, he was raised to believe in the absolute truth of God's word. And the senator even tells him,
"Is anything true, Wade?"
which he repeats to Angela later.
Is anything true?
Unfortunately, Wade can't throw out the EDS box at the end of the episode. That means that if he does die here, then he dies afraid, and uncertain of any absolute truth. Well guys, that's everything I found, but I love talking to all of you in the comments, so please let me know what your theories are for the next episode in the comments below. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.